Hi, I'm Dr. Shook, and I'd like to welcome you to this presentation. Today, what I want to share with you is a new approach and new science to the treatment of inflammatory bowel diseases. And we're going to talk about, pardon me, we're going to talk about functional bowel problems such as IBS, but we're really going to focus on the chronic conditions and the inflammatory conditions like Crohn's, colitis, celiac disease, and I'm even going to talk a little bit about gluten sensitivity. I'm going to talk about acid reflux and how a lot of these conditions tie together. Because what you may have been told that we don't know what's causing your inflammatory bowel condition is not, that's old science. What we know today is that we know that there are numerous drivers to these processes, and I'm going to talk about how we identify those drivers of the processes, how we approach them with treatments and natural approaches where we know we can improve your immune system function and we can decrease your symptoms naturally. So I want to welcome you, and let's go ahead and get started. First, I'd like to talk about why I work with these conditions. And it really comes down to the fact that when I was 13 years old, or approximately 13 years old, I developed gastrointestinal or digestive problems. At the time, being 13, I had no idea, and what was going on with me, I just knew that in my case, I had constipation where I didn't have a bowel movement for a week, and I felt horrible. So I got to the point where I asked, as a young boy, I had my mother. I was fortunate enough to have her there, but I asked her for her guidance and advice, and she gave me what she knew to do. She gave me products that had senna in them as a laxative. She told me to take Metamucil and gave me things to try and help me move my bowels. Gave me fiber supplements and a lot of things that we know today could be a big mistake with these problems. I'm going to talk about that. It seemed like over a period of time that my bowels did improve. I didn't go to see a doctor formally for it, though it was ongoing, and it was very disruptive to my those years of my teen years, because I had to live, and my life revolved around how I was going to do. Was I going to be constipated, or was I going to have diarrhea? Did I feel terrible and bloated? There were a lot of things that developed as a result of that. And then as I got into my early 20s, it seemed to kind of get better, and I don't really know why. And a lot of people that have inflammatory bowel problems or IBS, they have similar experiences. You don't really have a rhyme or reason because you don't understand what's driving that process, why you do well sometimes and other times you don't. There can be a lot of different triggers and drivers to these processes, which we're going to talk about, and that was kind of my experience. So it seemed like it was better for a while, and then it would get worse, and I know that there were certain things that I consumed in my diet that would trigger it. So you kind of learn as you go. There are certain things that you stay away from. But what we know is that there are a lot of verifiable, scientifically backed reasons that are backed by scientific literature as to why these problems develop. So whenever I got into my late 20s, when I was in my doctoral program, I developed psoriasis. And I had eczema, and this is something I think about now. I had eczema, and I was diagnosed with eczema when I was in my teens, about the time that I was having these problems with my digestion. And eczema and psoriasis are cousins. They're both related to the immune system, and that's what we know. Psoriasis is an autoimmune condition. This is when I had my first official autoimmune diagnosis, and I was surprised. I talked to my mother and I said, hey, why? Again, my mom. I talked to my mother, and I asked her, why do I have psoriasis? I mean, why do I have this rash on my elbows? And I didn't realize at the time that it was psoriasis. And she said, well, I hope you don't have psoriasis. And that was the first time it actually popped into my mind that this might be an autoimmune problem. And she proceeded to tell me her history of psoriasis. And I didn't know this, but my own mother has large plaque psoriasis, these large plaques all over her body. And I said, okay, so I knew I had a family history, what do you do about it? And so she started telling me about all these tar-based creams and things I can put on it. I said, this doesn't make sense to me. Why do I have the problem in the first place? You want me to put a tar-based cream, which we know tar is carcinogenic, it's cancer causing, and yes, it might help with your symptoms, but why do I have this problem in the first place? So I go to a dermatologist, and the dermatologist wants to give me steroid creams, prednisone, an oral steroid to suppress the immune system, and said that, if it gets bad enough, I might have to take an immune suppressing medication. And my eyebrows kind of went up, and I thought, why do I have this problem in the first place? And she just told me that she didn't know, that we don't know why you have autoimmune problems, but all we know how to do is, what we can basically do is help you with the symptoms. And I'm going to tell you, that's not good enough for me. That was not good enough for me. Because see, I know something. I knew going through my doctoral program that our body is self-healing, that our body works towards a state of balance. We call that homeostasis. So whenever you cut your hand, for example, you don't have to do anything to it. The blood will clot the cut. It will start to scab and patch itself. The immune system will come in and begin to kill any kind of bacteria and naturally clean the cut. Then it will begin to scar and repair itself. And in time, my cut will be healed because my body is working towards self-preservation. And I said, you know what? This makes no sense to me. And I wasn't hard on the dermatologist because she was doing what she knew to do. And I said, okay, thank you for the information, and I started studying. Right then I started researching autoimmunity, what the drivers of autoimmunity, and that's when I found functional medicine, which what we're going to talk about is today is going to be primarily in this talk functional medicine, which looks at the drivers and causes of disease processes. It's an evidence-based way to figure out why you have the problems you have. This is what's literally helped save my life, and I think add years to my life, because now I know how to manage my autoimmunity. And this is critical for these inflammatory bowel conditions because they are autoimmune. They're autoimmune. And you have to understand what drives the autoimmune process. You don't necessarily have to be on all these medications, even though that's the only thing your doctors know. So I had psoriasis and I started researching why. Then it's about 10 years now. And last year I'd been working. I love to work. I love to help my patients. I love to educate people. That's why I record videos like this, so that people around the world can learn about these problems and can reach out. They can have an option. They can learn about these problems. So what I want to do is inform people and educate you on the possibilities here. So last year I work a lot, and I love to help people, as I said. And last year I started feeling tired and just worn out, and I knew I needed to take some time off. But I decided to do some laboratory testing on myself. So what I learned was last year that I have an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's. That's where your immune system attacks the thyroid gland. It is the most common autoimmune condition in women in the United States. There's an estimated 27 million women that have this condition. It is a big problem, and I learned I had Hashimoto's, and that explained a lot about my fatigue and why I was so tired. So my autoimmunity was expanding. First I had psoriasis, now I have Hashimoto's. And what a lot of people don't know is that autoimmune conditions come in groups. It's very likely that I have antibodies to more tissues than just my skin and my thyroid gland. It's very, very likely that I have antibodies to other tissues. So I want to share my story because that's how I got to the point where I am now. Where I got to the point where I studied, where I was in a doctoral program. I graduated with my doctoral degree. I started studying functional medicine, and I've studied it for almost 7 years, sitting alongside of some forward-thinking doctors, medical doctors, osteopaths, chiropractors, naturopaths, and acupuncturists, doctors of acupuncture, sitting alongside a lot of forward thinkers and doctors that are thinking alternatively rather than thinking that the pharmacological system is the only method. Because I can tell you all that system's doing is covering up symptoms and is not doing anything to address why you have the problems you have. That's why this information is so important. So I want to share with you a little bit of information about myself. I've always been into health, fitness, and exercise since I was about 12 or 13 years old. And I did that because I was motivated due to seeing my family suffer with obesity and chronic health conditions. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to be that way. And at the time, I thought it was all a personal choice. I thought that my family was just making bad choices, and I was determined and actually a little resentful of them. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to be like you. I'm going to take control of my health. I'm going to control my destiny. And, you know, I think it did help me, but it was probably an unhealthy mindset. And I've learned a lot since then, and I feel differently about that. But, you know, it got me to where I am, and I was always into health and fitness from a very young age. And I started in my undergraduate degree. I had a degree in business, which wasn't really my passion. It was fitness, exercise, and health. And I worked in the business world for 2 years, and then I decided to go back to school to get a doctoral degree. And I went back to school, and I got my prerequisites for my pre-medicine program. I had to go back and get organic chemistries and college level physics with labs. Very, very rigorous program, very, very rigorous classes. And then I decided I wanted to go into alternative medicine, because I decided that the traditional medical model is not what I wanted, because I believe that the body can be healthy. So I went into my doctoral degree is a doctorate of chiropractic, and I love to talk to people about that, because what we do in our office is really not anything you would think of as chiropractic, because it's not spine related. It's actually nutrition and functional medicine. And I love to talk to people about that, because they don't realize a lot of times that chiropractic degree, modern chiropractic degree, is a very rigorous program. It's a 4-year program. So I've had 8 years of school to be a doctor. You know, it's 4 years of pre-medicine undergraduate, and it's 4 years of a very rigorous doctoral program with an internship and required board exams and continuing education. But people don't realize that the Doctor of Chiropractic degree, that the entire philosophy behind chiropractic is basically how to get your body working better naturally, healthy, you know, without the use of drugs. So I had a fantastic education in biochemistry, in endocrinology, in laboratory analysis, in fluids, in neuroanatomy, in anatomy, in histology, in you just name it. I mean, we had the first 2 years were very rigorous. I mean, we had gross anatomy dissection where we worked with cadavers. We had a fantastic education with lots of nutrition and biochemistry. Which, did you know this? Did you know that the current medical programs don't have not one single hour of nutrition? Not one single hour of nutrition. It blew me away to learn that. I mean, my degree and my doctoral degree was fantastic to prepare me to go into this type of work to help people with chronic inflammatory conditions. So what I did was I graduated, and then I started attending, but even before I graduated, postgraduate training in functional diagnostic medicine, and functional medicine and integrative medicine, which looked at bringing Western and Eastern medicines together and merging these alternative with the current medical model and kind of blending them as much as we can to get the best results with the most natural approach possible. So I started studying, and I'm board certified in integrative medicine now. I have hundreds of hours in a board diplomate program towards a diplomate through the American Board of Nutrition, which is a diplomate program available to medical doctors, naturopaths, and chiropractors, a lot of different practitioners. I've studied hundreds of hours under one of the leading thyroid doctors in the world. He is the leading thyroid doctor in the world. His name is Dr. Datis Karazian. He has written books on, and he lectures for the Institute for Functional Medicine and a lot of other fantastic organizations that teach functional medicine. So I've taken hundreds of hours of classes. I do, you know, training on top of training. Every month I take 1 or 2 classes, and it's because I want to get better results, and I want to help myself, I want to help my family, and I want to help my patients and the world, because this information can change your life. And then most recently, something that that's notable is something I've been training in genetics, and I've been training in really looking at someone's genes and looking to see if they have something called polymorphisms. We call them single nucleotide polymorphisms. And these polymorphisms, they're changes in your genetics that can cause you to not make enzymes, which are things that allow chemical processes in your body to occur. So you may make too many of the enzymes, you may not make enough of the enzymes. And what that can do is that can cause you to have problems with your biochemistry. Because what we know from functional medicine is that we can help people naturally, but some people don't respond. So why doesn't everyone respond the same? And what we're finding is that it's these genetic issues. And with these genetic problems, we can, if we identify them, a lot of times we can come up with a strategy to help us work around them. So that's the future of customized medicine, okay, and customized natural medicine. So that's where I'm really focusing a lot of my studies now, because it applies directly to me. I have single nucleotide polymorphisms, I have a vitamin D receptor polymorphism, and I also have issues with the MTHFR gene. I've got a lot of other issues that are going on. And then I'm studying functional neurology, which is a branch of neurology that works and focuses on working with the brain and the brain's systemic control and function of your body. I'm not going to get into that too much because we have a lot to cover. So what you're going to learn in this presentation is I'm going to talk about digestive disorders. I'm going to talk about why they occur. We're going to talk a lot about why. Why do I have this problem? Why does it occur? And we're going to talk about why you may or may not get better with the treatments that you're currently going through. And even if you're using alternative medicine, why you may not get better. We're going to talk about the causes, which is something that you've got to learn, you got to understand. What I'm going to do is really try to help you to get an understanding of when we treat someone from a functional medicine perspective, how it is a much different approach than treating a diagnosis and your symptoms. Because we're not trying to just focus on symptoms. If you treat the root cause of these problems, the symptoms get better. Okay, you actually help the person to achieve health rather than just suppressing their body and their natural function so that you take away a symptom. That doesn't address the underlying drivers or causes of the disease process. If we do this correctly, I'm going to show you natural ways to support and nourish your digestive tract that will allow your body to heal and regain health naturally. I mean, isn't that the ultimate goal? Don't you want to be healthy and not have to take all these medications? I mean, for me, it just doesn't make any sense to take a lot of medications that are just suppressing symptoms. I mean, that just makes no sense. It's the current medical model that we have, and it's good to have those things available as tools if that's our last resort. But if anything, you can use these strategies and things that I'm going to talk about. You've got to identify why you have the problem. And that's not impossible at all. As a matter of fact, what we're going to talk about is literature, and the stuff that we're going to talk about is, we're talking research and knowledge that's less than 10 years old. Some of the stuff I'm going to talk about was new this year. This is why your doctors don't know this stuff, because for them in the traditional medical practice, it takes 15 to 20 years for things to get into their curriculum that they can understand. And then when it's not a drug-based treatment and it's not a surgically based treatment, are they going to know about it? Think about that. Why would they? That's not in their model of healthcare. That's not in their toolbox. So why would they know about it? We're going to talk about these inflammatory bowel diseases. Irritable bowel syndrome, for example, it has a lot of different symptoms and there's no evidence for it. It's basically a diagnosis of exclusion. They look at everything and they say, oh, I've got a spastic colon, I've got these issues, and they're like, well, we don't see anything wrong, so you must have irritable bowel. Here, take some medication. There's no identification of the driver. I'm telling you, if you have irritable bowel syndrome, there are a lot of drivers that we're going to talk about. Crohn's disease, it's an autoimmune disease of the digestive tract. It can happen anywhere along the tract. It can happen in the small intestine and the large intestine, and it can affect any layer of the digestive tract. It's different from ulcerative colitis, and the ulcerative colitis attacks the large intestine and it attacks the lining. It doesn't attack some of the deeper layers, okay? They're both autoimmune. We're going to talk a little bit about celiac disease and sprue, which is an autoimmune attack against the small intestine, and it's triggered by a gluten sensitivity, or it's actually a gluten allergy, okay? Acid reflux and GERD, which is basically reflux. We're going to talk about that a little bit because it's important in the context of your entire digestive tract. A lot of people think that because you have heartburn, you have too much stomach acid. That is not true. Most people have reflux because they don't have enough stomach acid. And the question you have to ask yourself is, why? Because there are a lot of different drivers of reflux. You could have bacterial infections. You could have pernicious anemia, where it's an autoimmune attack against some of the cells that manufacture acid. Those all have consequences to your digestion and to the rest of the health of your colon. Because if you don't have adequate acidity, then when your food leaves your stomach and goes into your small intestine and your colon, you cannot have normal enzyme release from your gallbladder and your pancreas. You can't have the protective effects of the acid that will help to kill any type of bacteria or parasites that may be in your food, and then those things can populate your GI tract and cause chronic inflammation. These are critical things. Your doctors are not looking at these drivers because they are not educated on this. This is just, I just almost plead to my patients. You have got to consider what's causing your problem. And if your doctors aren't willing to help you identify that, then you got the wrong doctor. So these inflammatory bowel conditions, with all of them, inflammation is present. Okay, with all of them, inflammation is present. So why do you have inflammation? Inflammation in your bowels, okay, your intestinal tract, it leads to systemic full body inflammation, because when they're inflamed, inflammatory chemicals circulate through the bloodstream. So anytime you have inflammation in one area of your body, you have it systemically. And the bowels are a very, very common cause of inflammation. Now this next statement, I want you to tell me if this is not the truth, because anyone that has any of these inflammatory bowel conditions, they know this to be true. I know this to be true. Inflammation in your bowels results in inflammation in your brain. Ask anyone that has Crohn's, colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, or that has celiac or sprue. Ask them if when they have a lot of digestive upset, if they don't have problems with like brain fog or clarity of thought, or if their thought processes aren't slower. The reason for that is because that systemic inflammation that's created becomes so much and so great that it circulates through your body, it circulates through your bloodstream, and it crosses the blood-brain barrier. And that inflammation gets into the brain itself, and that causes problems with your neuron or your brain chemistry. So you have all of these, your thought processes become clouded and slower. That inflammation is not good for brain health long term. That can cause neuronal degeneration. Those neurons are the nerve cells of your brain. That is not what you want. You don't want something that leads to brain atrophy and poor neuron health. Your gut is critically important at having and keeping your brain healthy. Okay, that is, we know there's a gut-brain connection. It's very, very important. The most important question that you have to ask, and that you need to be asking every time you talk to your doctor or that you're considering taking a medication, what does this medication do, and what is my problem? How is it helping or affecting my body? Understand why. It's not complicated. You don't have to be a doctor to understand that a medication, that a steroid, is just suppressing inflammation. But why do you have inflammation in the first place is the question you need to ask. You need to ask why. And you need to ask why, and if your doctor gets offended because you're asking them why, then you've got the wrong doctor. They need to help you. They need to be working with you to help save your life, not dictating care to you. And if they don't have time, or they can't explain to you why they're doing what they're doing in layperson's terms that you can understand, you have the wrong doctor. Does the current medical approach make any sense to you, to these inflammatory conditions? Why, the reason why you have these problems is not something that's answered by most physicians, because guess what? It doesn't change their treatment plan, because their approach to these problems is limited. Their toolbox is limited. And if it has to do with some kind of underlying infection or bacterial problem or parasite, that's not really in their toolbox, and those are things that they don't regularly diagnose and work up. Some do, but most don't. Well, they assume once you have an autoimmune condition like Crohn's or colitis, then these drivers of these processes are irrelevant, and our focus needs to be on the immune system or on a surgery. It's ludicrous. It's ridiculous. You've got to look at the drivers of the process, and then if those things are appropriate, okay. But you've got to address why. You've got to help the person nourish their body back to health so that they have a chance to be healthy. You can't neglect the fact that they're unhealthy and then just treat a disease process. The disease process is occurring because they're unhealthy. So some of these forms, what they're going to do is they're going to give you medications that either shut something down or turn something off. Listen, what did I tell you to begin with? Your body is working towards a state of health, always. Your body makes no mistakes. It is working towards being healthy. So when you shut down what it's doing, it's creating inflammation. It's doing these things to protect itself. You have to understand that when you shut down what the body's doing, you're going against its innate, its inborn intelligence. We don't even understand the body. We don't understand how to create life. We don't understand a lot of these physiological processes. So when you go and you just start shutting them down and you work against it rather than work with it, you are contradicting your body's natural abilities to heal. This medical management is typically steroids. A lot of high-powered steroids to suppress your system, to squash your immune response. Or they want to cut out your colon. They want to cut out part of it. But what happens? What happens is they cut out part of your colon and only to have a future surgery because they're not addressing the process. So because the process is not addressed, it progresses to another part of the colon, and then you have to have another surgery and another surgery. Why is the process occurring? If these things continue to happen with these surgeries and having to continually take these medications because the cause of the condition, the inflammation, the autoimmunity is not being addressed. The why is not being addressed. Listen, the functional medicine approach to these inflammatory conditions and to IBS as well is to remove the triggers of the immune disease. Remove the triggers of the inflammation. Decreasing that inflammation, allowing the body to heal. And you got to balance the immune response. See, with your immune system, you have two different sides to your immune system. You've got this thing called the Th1 and the Th2 system. Okay? They're two different sides. We're going to talk about those right now. The immune system, when you think about this, your immune system, if you're going to work with the immune system, you have to know how it works. If I was a mechanic, I better know how a car works if I'm going to fix the car. I better understand the pieces of the car, right? So you have to know how it works if you want to know how to fix it when it breaks. So let's talk about the basics of how it works. And guess what, folks? It's not that complicated. So you have two parts of the immune system. You have barrier systems that keep things that shouldn't be in your body out, okay? And then you have blood cells, okay? And we're going to talk about these in different parts. But your barrier systems, there are four barrier systems. Your skin, your blood-brain barrier, your lung barrier, and your GI barrier, your gastrointestinal barrier. Keeps things in the GI tract that should not be in your bloodstream. If that barrier breaks down or any of these barriers break down, then things get into your bloodstream that shouldn't be there. And that triggers your immune system, okay? So let's look at the white blood cells. So now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the humoral immunity, the immune system of that's inside your body, of your blood. Okay, so let's talk about your immune response primarily of the different blood cells. So you basically, remember I said you have two different sides to your immune system. You have the Th1 system, which is right here. These guys are they're the blood cells that whenever you cut your hand, they go there immediately and they kill any type of bacteria or anything that's there. It forms the pus around the splinter, okay? They go in their immediate response. They go and they form and they kill things immediately. Then this side of the immune system is the Th2 system. It's the delayed response. It happens up to 3 days later. It goes around and there are these blood cells that basically look for infections or things that are foreign to your body that shouldn't be there, and they put these sticky notes all over it and say, hey, I want the immune system, the rest of the immune cells to come and kill this stuff. And this happens, usually it's about up to 3 days later. It tags the invaders and it's your memory, your immune system memory. So remember, Th1 and Th2, these guys have to be in balance. Whenever you have an infection or you get sick, they shift. And your body will stimulate, one side's stimulated and it goes and kills things. And then when you're no longer sick or you no longer have an infection, it comes back and it's back in balance. Okay? That's how it normally should work. When it's well regulated, these guys kind of like on a seesaw here, they're well balanced, well regulated, okay? Right at the center of these systems is something called the Th3 system. And the Th3 system, what it does is it helps to, when it's normally functioning, it helps to produce things called regulatory T cells. These are immune system cells that go out and they stimulate each side here and they balance it. Without normal regulatory T cells, these things can be kind of haywire and they can shift inappropriately. If they shift inappropriately, they'll stimulate tissue destruction. And they do that because whenever they shift, it stimulates the Th17 system. All you need to know is that when this thing's out of balance, that Th17 system's activated and it causes tissue destruction. And that's where you have your autoimmune symptoms and damage and flare-up, okay? Autoimmunity, when you're autoimmune, it means that you have an imbalance in this Th1 and Th2 system. When your body attacks itself, this is what happens. You have a shift of one side, and that will cause you to have an overly stimulated immune system that once you're autoimmune and the triggers for autoimmunity are there, your immune system will attack your own body, okay? So how do we balance this immune system? If when this thing is shifted, I'm having tissue destruction, it's flaring up my Crohn's, it's flaring up my colitis, how do I get it back in balance? Okay? Well, you have to understand the things that cause it to lose balance. This, folks, these are the triggers of your autoimmunity. Okay? These are the things that trigger it, that cause it to flare up. These are the things that we have to identify if you want to naturally help your body calm down that immune response and put yourself into remission. See, once you're autoimmune, you're always autoimmune. But what you can do is kind of like a bright light that's controlled by a dimmer switch. You can turn that dimmer switch all the way down. So the light's off, but it's not pushed off. It's just dimmed so far that you have no symptoms, no signs at all of any autoimmunity. Your autoimmunity is completely in remission, whereas if you were seen by a doctor and you didn't tell them that you had it, they would say, I don't see anything wrong with you. That is the goal. That's where I am. That's where I am with my Hashimoto's. That's where I am with my psoriasis. That's where you can be if we identify these triggers and we help your body nurture and heal itself and heal your barrier systems, remove all the things that are bad, kill the stuff that there's something there that's triggering your immune response. We can get you back. We work with you to nurture your body to health, and that takes time, but we can put this thing into remission and keep it there. That's the future. So we look at two different categories of things that can cause your immune system to be shifted. They are called DisRegulators, things that cause you to lose that balance, or active antigens. These are things that your body's constantly trying to kill. Remember, if your body's trying to kill something, it will be shifted. It will shift your immune system so one side's dominant, and that allows you to increase your amount of a certain type of immune system cell that can go out and kill things. Okay? That's how your body normally works. But what happens is if you lose regulation, your body you can have an inappropriate response, and your immune system can attack and destroy your own tissues. So these are DisRegulators. Okay, starting here. I'll tell you as we go, but you can look up here in the corner which says DisRegulators. So these are things that cause you to lose the balance. So let's talk about this. Does that make you hungry? Listen, I understand that. See, this is the standard American diet here. This is terrible for you, because here's why. A lot of this is full. These types of foods here that are fried and have all of these processed meats and everything else on them, these are full of omega-6 fats. Okay, we've all heard of these fats, right? The omega-3s, omega-6s, omega-9s. What we know is that omega-6, when you have a lot more omega-6s in your body than you have omega-3s, your ratio of omega-6s is higher, and that puts you in an inflammatory state. You do not want to be in an inflammatory state. That will cause you, pro-inflammatory state will cause you to dysregulate and lose regulation of your immune system. Listen, if you take an oil that says 3-6-9 blend, or it has any omega-6s or 9s, do not take those. You're getting too many 6s in your diet anyway. You need to be taking omega-3s. Okay, take omega-3s. we found, if any of you ever heard about the prehistoric man that they found frozen in ice in, like, I can't remember if it was Nepal or wherever it was a few years ago. what they did was they've done studies on this guy, and what they found was that when they looked at they did biopsies and they looked at his ratios of fats in his body, they found that he was 1-to-1, 1 omega-3 to 1 omega-6. He was in balance. That's the ideal. We believe that's the ideal ratio. Do you know what the standard American ratio is? 25 omega-6s to 1 omega-3, up to even higher than 50-to-1. I'm telling you, when you have that kind of ratio, you feel horrible. You will lose immune system regulation, and it will trigger autoimmunity, and it will cause you to be in a pro-inflammatory state. You absolutely, these are some of the things that we look at very first, because they're the easiest things that we can change and improve. Number 2, blood sugar regulation and stress. So here's the thing: when your blood sugar spikes and dips, it causes dysregulation of hormones. You will not have normal hormone function. You will not have normal neurotransmitter or brain chemistry function. It stimulates the production of cortisol, a stress hormone. Stress hormones thin your barrier systems. It thins all those barrier systems I talked about and makes them permeable or leaky. Leaky gut is something you may have heard of, or we call it intestinal permeability. Okay? Intestinal permeability is how it's referenced in the literature, but to the layperson it's called leaky gut. It means your GI tract lets proteins and bacteria and things into your bloodstream that shouldn't be there. Those things trigger your immune system to have an immune response. We're going to talk about those in the next section. But these are the things that we have to balance and regulate. Hormone imbalances. If you have elevated insulin or elevated cortisol, I said just thins the barrier systems, or you have surges in estrogen, it will trigger and shift your Th1 and Th2 immune system. We know that there are things that do this, that we understand a lot of the drivers of these problems, and we can look at these with the right testing and figure out where you are, what your drivers of this process are, and help you to work to reverse it and unwind it. Neurological imbalances. And you think, what? A neurological imbalance? How does that cause my immune system to go into dysregulation? What's an immune imbalance? Consider this. Have you ever heard of the fight or flight system, or the rest and digest system? Those are two different sides of your autonomic nervous system. So you have a voluntary nervous system that lets me contract and move my hand. That's voluntary, right? I can speak and talk. These are all voluntary things. I think about it, it happens. But you have an involuntary side. That's called your autonomic nervous system. And that autonomic is completely involuntary. And see, it has two divisions. One is what you see here, sympathetic. We call that the fight or flight system. You get scared, that's triggered, okay? Then there's another side of this system called the parasympathetic, and that means that's your rest and digest. All these involuntary functions that your body synchronizes and controls without you thinking about it happen through that system. So neurologically, you can have an imbalance there. And that imbalance occurs whenever you have these stress responses, or due to our modern day lifestyle. I mean, there are a number of different mechanisms that cause you to be stuck in like a fight or flight mode. Some of the things that can trigger it that are not necessarily, everything has a hormonal component to it, but chronic stress, marriage difficulties, difficulties with relationships, money, work, the modern lifestyle around us, traffic, news, all these things that cause you to be in a constant state of guarding and of stress. Those are things that will cause this sympathetic system to always be on go, to be wound up. And that is not good, because that pushes your cortisol production. That causes a lot of problems with digestion. Do you know that your autonomic nervous system, that rest and digest side, which is the parasympathetic, there's a nerve that leaves your brainstem and it goes to your digestive tract. It's called the vagus nerve. That vagus nerve, sometimes we can do things to help with gut function that maybe aren't necessarily related to foods or related to infections or related to some of these things we're talking about. Maybe we can give you some actually brain-based exercises. That may sound kind of like foreign to you. Like, what are you talking? Brain-based exercises, what is that? Well, how many times do you have gut problems where your gut's just kind of spastic and twisting or moving? Okay? So we know that that how your gut moves and that motility, that's controlled by your brain. That's controlled by a nerve called the vagus nerve. And that vagus nerve, what you have to do is you can do things to actually stimulate that vagus nerve to have a more appropriate stimulation of your gastrointestinal tract. So those are the things that we can do, and we do that with brain-based exercises like gargling, like singing out loud. That stimulates the pontomedullary area of your brainstem, the lower part of your brainstem, where that vagus nerve comes from, where it originates. I'm not going to get into that too much here because I don't have time to do a full lecture on that. But those are things that we can do. And those are not things that are like out there esoteric stuff. This is neurology. We know this works. We know these things can help. So it's very important that you have to have someone that's going to give you and consider your whole picture. If you're just looking at the immune system and you think a cortisone or a prednisone, or another medication like that just to squash the immune system or an immune suppressant's the only thing that you have available, then you're not getting the whole picture. And your doctors mean well. They mean well. They want to help you, but they don't understand this because they haven't trained in functional medicine, and many of them haven't gone through this themselves. And when you go through something yourself, you will do anything you can to be healthy. Poor absorption of fat is another thing that causes dysregulation. Okay, so we lose regulation of our immune system if you don't have normal fat absorption. Do you know that all of your fat-soluble vitamins, means they're absorbed with fat, are A, D, E, and K. Vitamin D is critical for autoimmunity. Vitamin K is critical for normal function. All those fat-soluble vitamins are absolutely critical. And poor absorption, a lot of us with inflammatory bowel conditions have poor absorption because our gut's inflamed, so it doesn't absorb well. So we look for absorption of fat because vitamin D helps to regulate the immune system. It helps to produce those regulatory T cells to balance out the immune system. It will cause dysregulation if you don't absorb fat. All of your hormones are dependent upon cholesterol. You have to have cholesterol to make testosterone and estrogen. This is critical. So we look at this and we work naturally to help you fix these problems. Okay, the last dysregulator. If you have these genetic problems I was referring to, they can cause you to have biochemical problems where you're not getting breakdown, or you're not getting the creation of certain chemicals and hormones of biochemistry and nutrients that you need. These can be very, very important. So we can do genetic testing and some advanced laboratory testing to look at these and determine if this is part of your driver of the process. Okay? The next category, so those are the things that cause you to lose regulation. Now what we're going to talk about are things that cause your body to be constantly stimulated or trying to kill something. Okay? These are things that are called antigens. Antigens are things that your immune system's trying to kill or thinks it's foreign. Okay? So it's trying to get rid of it or get it out of your body because it thinks it would harm you. The number one thing are food sensitivities. Food sensitivities. These food sensitivities are not allergic reactions, like true anaphylactic reactions where your throat or your tongue will swell. Okay, those are different. Those are IgE. That's a type of antibody response. These are different types of responses. These are IgG and IgE. Those are types of immune. That's a type of an immune response that I'm going to talk to you about. So what happens with food sensitivities is you eat something and you don't even know that you have any kind of sensitivity to it. If it's a food sensitivity, it will cause low-grade inflammation. That will cause inflammation of your GI tract. That will cause it to thin and become permeable or leaky. That will allow proteins, bacteria, and things in your digestive tract to leak into the bloodstream. That leaking into the bloodstream has to be fixed. It has to be fixed. It causes autoimmunity. We know that leaky gut, which is what that impermeability is called, that anything that causes GI inflammation, whether it be food sensitivities or any of the other things that we're going to talk about in this particular section, will cause you to have leaking of proteins into the bloodstream. Those proteins will trigger an immune response. The immune system will try to destroy those proteins because they're foreign. What your immune system will do is circulate and look. Remember that Th2 system I said that puts sticky notes on everything that's foreign? It circulates throughout your bloodstream looking for those foreign proteins that have leaked in, and guess what? Some of your own tissue, some of your body's tissues, and let's just say because we're talking about Crohn's and colitis that are autoimmune. Let's say that your GI tract, part of the lining of your colon or your small intestine, looks like that protein that leaked into the bloodstream. Your immune system will mistakenly tag your colon or part of your tissues as foreign. And once it's tagged as foreign, your immune system then starts to attack it. And there you have it. You are now autoimmune. Your body has lost self-tolerance. It no longer identifies your colon as you. And every time you consume or you get something into your bloodstream that triggers that immune response, your colon gets attacked too. Do you understand why it's so important to identify what's causing this process? Because you can never be free of the problem unless you know why you have the problem. Food sensitivities is the #1 place we start because it's the easiest thing to make a difference with. I'm going to talk about some of the testing that we do for this. Active antigens. We're still on these things that your body's trying to kill. Hidden chronic infections. This is the next area because this is very, very common, and this is very, very commonly missed. So what we see is that H. pylori, this bacteria, H. pylori is a bacteria that will typically live in the stomach. A lot of people know about it because it can cause ulcers. It's extremely common. It is not normal to have it in your GI tract. No matter what anyone tells you, it is associated with a lot of problems. It burrows into the stomach wall. It shuts down the production or lowers your production of acidity. It can lead to acid reflux-like symptoms. Even though it lowers the stomach acidity, it will cause your food to sit in your stomach longer than it should be there. It will putrefy, the food will, as it digests, and you will regurgitate it into your esophagus, and it will cause burning. And what the reality of the situation is that the stomach acidity is lower than it should be. So that's low acid, but it still burns because it's still acid. And then also what happens is, see, your stomach, to open up at the bottom and let the food into the small intestine, there has to be enough acidity. So these things shut down that acidity and the food just sits there longer and longer. So when the food gets into the small intestine, it doesn't have as much acid content. And what happens at that point is your gallbladder and your pancreas, which sit right there as it comes through into the small intestine, they're not stimulated as strongly because they require acid to be stimulated to release enzymes into the food so that you digest it, so that you break down the fats, the bile salts, break down the fats and emulsify the fats so that the nutrients can be absorbed in your small intestine. So it sets you off for an entire cascade of poor digestion from the small intestine through the colon, the entire process. H. pylori is a big deal, so we test for it. Dysbiosis, that means an overgrowth of bad bacteria. An overgrowth of bad bacteria is, here's what you need to know about bacteria, and this is as simple as I can put it. When you have bad bacteria, the bad bacteria in your gut eat vitamins and nutrients and things that you need, and their byproduct, what they make, or what I tell people in a very simple term, is they eat good stuff that you need, they take it from you, and then they poop or they make bad stuff and they leave the bad stuff in your gut. That's a real simplified way to say it, but it's very, very simple. I mean, it's the easiest way to get the point across. So the good bacteria in your gut that you need there, what they do is they eat bad stuff, and their byproduct, or what they poop, is good stuff. Vitamins, minerals, nutrients, not minerals, but vitamins and nutrients, things that you need. Okay? Dysbiosis, you ever heard of SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth? That's when this bacteria bacteria moves into your small intestine where it shouldn't be. And that happens when the colon is filled with gas. This is one of the ways. It's filled with gas, and it blows up. And what it does is your ileocecal valve, which sits where the small intestine joins with the colon. It's right there. It's near your appendix. Okay? It's on the bottom right-hand quadrant of your abdomen. It sits right there. When your colon becomes full of air, it blows that ileocecal valve open, and bacteria works its way up into the small intestine that shouldn't be there. Then when you eat food, that bacteria feeds off of it and ferments and creates gases. Those gases bloat you, and you feel like you're pregnant after you eat. That's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. You have to take care of that, or you're going to have inflammation and chronic inflammation, chronic digestive problems, small intestinal inflammation. You're setting yourself up for autoimmunity if you're not already autoimmune. The thing is that none of these problems come by themselves. I've never seen anyone that just has one problem. They always have a combination of these issues we're going to talk about. Parasites. How many people have had parasites? You know, not many people know that they have a parasite. I mean, very, very, very few people have been tested. What we do is we know that parasites are common. Have you ever eaten a salad? Okay. Well, those salads are raised somewhere. And those salads are typically raised in dirt, and they're animals. that can urinate, defecate. There's stuff can be in the soil, fertilizer. Parasites are real things. You ever go swimming in a lake? You ever swim in a swimming pool? You can get parasites. So we check for parasites because guess what parasites do? They live in your body, and your immune system knows they're there, so it's constantly trying to kill them, but a lot of times your immune system can't do it on its own. So that will cause you to have a shift in your immune system and where you're constantly trying to kill these things. The same thing with candida or yeast, which is a major problem with people. They have an overgrowth of yeast in their colon. And that's a chronic infection that your immune system tries to kill that creates a shift in the dominance, and it just constantly stays elevated. And then your autoimmunity, you can never get it under control. You've got to kill these hidden infections. Number 3, more active antigens, things that your body tries to kill or eliminate. All of these environmental compounds. I'm not going to go into these because you can read them here. But all of these things are environmentally, they get into your body, and your body sees them as foreign, and it can create a shift in your immune system where it tries to, it doesn't know what to do with it. And that shift creates an immune response, and it can trigger your autoimmunity to flare and become worse, or even trigger autoimmunity. So these are things that we have to consider, because if we find that you're getting exposed to bisphenol, bisphenol A, BPA, we have to figure out where are you getting that from. Are you drinking out of plastic bottles? If you are right now, listen to me. If you are drinking out of plastic bottles, stop drinking out of plastic. Drink out of glass or stainless steel, okay? Do you have, there's very long names, some of these things. Are you getting exposed to a flame retardant? Because we know flame retardants cause problems with the immune system, okay? All of these chemicals do. So you would think to yourself, where am I getting exposed to flame retardant? Do you have carpet in your house? Guess what your carpet has? It very, very likely has flame retardant, so it doesn't burn as fast. Do you have fabric in your car, on your car seats? Do you have fabric on any of the furniture in your house? Guess what those fabrics are treated with? Flame retardants. Yeah. So every time you sit on there and you think that you're sitting there with your grandkids and they're on the carpet playing around, you think about the stuff that's getting into your body. This is why we have a lot of reform and a lot of things that need to be changed in big business, because we are exposing ourselves to poisons, and we're mandating that a lot of this stuff be done. We need to find better ways, because it's killing us. It's making us sick. And then leaky gut. Now, I've already explained to you leaky gut, that the gut wall becomes permeable due to inflammation. Any of the things we've just talked about can cause gut intestinal tract permeability. And chronic permeability that lets things leak in and stimulates the immune response that can trigger autoimmunity. Here's what the scientific literature tells us. You see that colander? That's kind of like what happens when your gut's leaky. Stuff flows into it, and instead of it being a solid sealed surface that doesn't let anything through, you just have bacteria and all these things that are bigger and larger molecules that shouldn't be in your bloodstream. They just pour through into the bloodstream. And your body doesn't know what to do with them. That's the same thing that happens here. What the scientific literature tells us now, this is current. This is current literature. Okay, this is the contemporary literature today. That leaky gut syndrome or intestinal permeability is a prerequisite, meaning it is required to have an autoimmune disease. You have to have had that to develop an autoimmune disease. And you don't know that you have this. We can actually do testing. We can do testing to see if you have antibodies to occludin and zonulin, and if you have the lipopolysaccharides in your bloodstream. We use advanced laboratory testing. We can tell you if you have that for sure. So how do you know if you have these triggers? How do you know? Have you had any of this kind of workup done? Some people have had a little bit of it, but most people haven't had 90% of what I'm going to talk about. How do you know? You do the right tests. You do the right tests, you go to the right doctor, you get the right analysis, and you figure out what's going on so you can heal your body, like really heal it, and not just cover up the symptoms. Get your health back. How do you know where to start? So what you do is, the first thing that we do is we do the right testing. And these are some of the things that we can do. We do comprehensive metabolic panels on people. So we look at their metabolism inside and out through a blood draw. We look at the largest panel, I guarantee you, that you've ever had, because it gives us information on what to do next. You get adrenal testing. So sometimes we will check the adrenal gland function, because remember I said cortisol, elevated or low cortisol, chronically low, can thin those barrier systems. We know that thin intestinal lining creates leaky gut, and leaky gut triggers immune system flare-up and autoimmunity. So yes, we want to know about cortisol. Yes, we want to know about hormones, because we can also, through the same testing panel, we can get your male and female sex hormones, testosterone and estrogen, because estrogen and testosterone surges or dips can cause you to have a shift in the immune system too. So we want to look at those. We want to look at how they're being metabolized. We want to look at their levels. We want to look at genetic testing for those single nucleotide polymorphisms, or the SNPs. We want to do testing to determine if you have nutritional deficiencies, because you know how many people are deficient in magnesium and zinc? Those are required in so many chemical processes in your body, and simple things like that can help to really improve your function. So yeah, we look for those basic things. We look for problems with methylation, which is a process of detoxification. It's chemical processes of your body. They're absolutely critical. And now we look at the methylation in combination with those genetic SNPs so that we can get a very clear picture on what's happening with enzymes and your body's ability to make them. We want to see if there are bacteria, parasites, or fungi that is growing in your body. Because remember, those are chronic inflammatory triggers. Those are really, really important with ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, and IBS. We want to look at environmental and chemical triggers. We want to look at those things. We can do those through some advanced immunological testing that's the best in the world. We work with labs that have developed testing specifically for functional medicine, because they know that we're on the cutting edge of functional medicine. They know that functional medicine is the future of health, and to get people healthy and really have a true quality of life and to get your life back, you have to do functional medicine. We look for dietary triggers and food sensitivities, and we look at them. We can look at very expanded panels to tell you if you have cross-reactivity, if foods that you're eating are triggering your immune system. We are going to do, in a lot of cases, we'll do advanced genetic testing. You know what? If you want to get better, we're going to do the tests. I want you to get better, and I want you to get better quick. I don't want it to take forever. I want you to get better so we can get you healthy. We base this on genetic testing. We base what we do on genetic testing. We can do organic acids tests, and we can do methylation panels to see into what's happening with your DNA and if it's contributing to your problems. And a lot of times it is, and we can really tweak and improve what we do with you. A lot of patients come to us and they're like, hey, I've had a lot of testing. My labs look great, but I got this immune system problem. And here's what I want to tell you. Lab ranges are misleading. They're based on unhealthy people. I mean, go get your blood drawn. Who's in there? You see the old man, the little old man, and I mean no disrespect. I love everyone and older people. You see the little old man on oxygen. You see the person that's obese and sick. You see the lady that's fighting off cancer. You see the young man that's there getting drug tested. That's not our healthy population. And guess what? These labs are based off of averages of those people. And you're compared against them. The healthy people that aren't having problems don't go get their blood drawn because they're not sick. So I'm going to tell you how we as functional medicine doctors help you to get better and more accurate and more sensitive information with your labs. What we do is we help you to determine if you think your lab tests have been told that they're normal. This is what we do. You see this top bar here, which is red. It says abnormal low lab values. So that'd be the lab low. You'd have a problem, right, if you were over that. Then this is the normal, and I quote, normal lab range. It's this broad area. And then if you go above that, you have abnormal high values. Okay. Let me ask you a question. If right in the middle's ideal and normal, and that's where you want to be, what if you're like right here? Am I okay? Or if I'm like 2 or 3 points away from being high, is that okay, or am I sick? But if I'm 1 or 2 points over, am I sick now? It doesn't. When do you start becoming unhealthy? Okay, what we do, look at this bar here. What we do is, you see these yellow areas? Those are our functional ranges. Okay, so here the green area on the bottom, that's the ideal optimal range we want you in. These functional ranges come from the American Association of Clinical Chemists and from consensus statements of all these different groups. Let's say with like thyroid, there's a consensus statement that could be put out, and what we'll do is we'll use what they say is ideal, not what the lab averages and what the labs say. Some of them are from clinical experience, And then some of the ranges are actually the lab ranges that we will use because they're the best, they're appropriate for that. But we use these more sensitive ranges. So what happens is if you start to drift outside of the ideal range and you get into this yellow area, we can look and it's more sensitive for a system that's declining, that has poorer health. And what we can do is it can tell us if it can tell us about a problem before it becomes a disease state. So we use these to be more sensitive. We apply these to our labs, so that we can help you to get information and make better decisions before it becomes a disease. Here's the thing, were all your tests normal? Did you have your tests? Let's take a look at some of this stuff. So let's look at glucose, which is a fasting blood sugar. Our functional ranges, we use 85 to 100, okay? If you go to the standard lab ranges, they're typically somewhere between like 65 to 110. Okay, they'll tell you that that your range is okay there. From a functional range, if you had 73, if you came in with a fasting blood sugar of 73, what I would tell you is that you're functionally hypoglycemic or low. If you would go through your lab, they would say, oh, there's no problem, you're not at 65 yet. Really? I've met a lot of people that have blood sugar of 73 that feel horrible. But you're normal. There's nothing wrong with you. You're normal. Well, really, why do I still feel terrible then? And those are the problems. You know, we've got to do better work, and that's what we're doing with functional medicine. We are looking to do more sensitive work, and there are a lot of examples of this. So I just wanted to share with you that, you know, you might not be normal. You're just lab normal, which means you're just not sick yet. You're just not diagnosable disease state yet. But wait a little while, and we'll see what happens. That's not the approach we take. We want to be preventative. We want to be restorative. We want to help you heal. So we look at things differently. The traditional approach here that you'll see medically is people are going to basically, for these inflammatory conditions, they're just going to give you steroids, immune suppressants, and anti-inflammatories. I mean, there is no addressing why. I don't accept that. I refute that. I refuse that to be part of how I help people because I think that's just being palliative. I mean, you know what? Palliative care is hospice care. I want life care. I want to live. So let's talk about how to live. That system manages the problem. It does not address why. Here's the thing. I got family members that are medical doctors. I got great friends that are medical doctors. I got great friends that are nurse practitioners and PAs. They all love everyone that they see. Every single person in healthcare means well. And don't get me wrong, that your doctors really care about you. They're trying to do the best they can for you. They just don't know what else to do. And you know what? If I was in their shoes, I would be the same way. I wouldn't know what else to do for you unless I'd studied functional medicine. And from an allopathic, from your traditional medical model, that doesn't fit with what they do because this takes time. This takes time. You got to spend more time. You can't even do a 10 or 15 minute office visit. Some doctors give you 5 minutes. There's no way you can do this in that kind of time because it requires changes in lifestyle, changes in diet, nutraceutical supplementation to nurture the body back to health. Then you get people off all that stuff you put them on, and you help them reincorporate and get back to more of a normal diet. Because it's not about having you do something long term. The functional medicine approach is about helping you nurture your health back, then get you back to a normal life. We have the best system for emergency care, the very best system for emergency care. If you need to be put back together, or you need a heart transplant, or you need a liver transplant, or you need a surgery, this is the country to be in. But when it comes to chronic care, we're failing miserably, and that's where functional medicine is and shines. That's where we are the future of rescuing and helping people that have chronic diseases. What makes what I do and how we work with patients different is that I want to figure out why, the root cause of your problem, so that we can help you to get your health back. I want to work to support your health naturally, and that's what I do. I leave no stone unturned to figure out why you have the problem you have. I tell this to people that I talk to. You got to think about this. You got to think about what is life to you? What matters to you? Because you have to decide if you want to keep going down that road of that medical management where they're just treating your symptoms and you continue to be sick, or do you want to go down that path, this path, which is typically the path less taken, because it's new science, but it's not the one pill fix. There's no one pill fix. It's just the the process of managing the disease. We're trying to manage the symptoms as you get more and more sick. Or do you want to take this path doing functional medicine to help you restore your health, to figure out why you got this problem? How do you see yourself in the future? Because I looked at myself and I said, you know what? I don't want that for myself. I don't believe that there's nothing I can do for my health. And I was right, and I'm right today. And I don't want to live, I want to be here for my kids. I want to be here to help my community and my parents and my family. I want to live a long, vibrant life. And I know everyone does too. Everyone does. I don't know how to do that any other way than with this stuff I'm telling you. I don't know of any other way. Because there's no magic pill, there's nothing magical that we can do. We just have to do what's required to get the body healthy. And you got to think about what's important to you. Because if it doesn't make your heart beat a little heavy to think that you might be leaving your significant other behind, you might be dying before you should, you might be leaving some grandkids, some children behind, then you're not looking at the right motivators. Because that's what I look at. I look at that for myself. I'm going to do everything I can. I will be here to help the community, my family. You know, your future can be better. You don't have to just do those things. There are other options and other alternatives. What we do in my clinic is this. It's a 2-visit process if you see us. If you come in to see me, I have you complete a very extensive, and I mean very extensive, case history. I want to know everything about you. You have to return it before, at least a few days before a scheduled appointment, so that I can review it, because I review it before I meet with you on that first day. And I'll review it with you, and when I review it with you in a 30-minute appointment, I will have recommendations for you on what's next. And typically that means some testing. After we get some testing ordered, we'll order testing, you come back for a second visit. On that second visit, what I do is I do a report of finding. You have to have your significant other with you. You have to. Here's the problem. Whenever I go over findings clinically with someone, this stuff requires changes in diet and lifestyle. It requires a change in your life temporarily, at least temporarily. If your significant other's not there to know about all the problems that we find, you might have parasites, you might have autoimmunity, you might have all these other drivers to this process. You're going to have to change your diet some. You're going to have to be on temporary supplementation. They have to know how bad this problem is and what it takes and what these consequences are. Or what happens is you're going to go home and try to explain it to your significant other, and they're going to have no clue and not understand anything. And they're not going to be on board to help you. And I refuse to set you up for failure. I refuse it. And I will not do it. So what I require is that your significant other be there. If it applies, if you have a significant other, they have to be there. They have to be there. I will not see you on day 2 without them there, because it is that important. Because see, I'm serious about working with people. I'm not playing games here. I want you to be healthy, and I refuse to set you up for failure. And you see, I've done it enough where I've had people that didn't have their significant other with them, and it set them up for failure because that person didn't understand what they were going through. And when I spend an hour talking to someone about my findings on day 2, I do not have that time to do it again. So what you have to do is they have to be there, because it's that important. Because we're going to talk about things that are going to be lifestyle changes. And it's really important. And I refuse to set you up for failure. I refuse to do it. If I can help you, I'll give you my best recommendation. If I can accept your case, I'll let you know that day. I don't accept everyone, because here's the thing. If I don't think I can help you, or if I don't think we're a good fit, then I'm very upfront with you, because you have to be committed to being better. There are a lot of requirements of you, and I am willing to help anyone that is willing and committed to helping themselves. Absolutely committed. But you have to be absolutely committed. There can be no wishy-washiness. You have to say, I want to be healthy, I am going to be healthy, and I want to do this, and I will do this. That's the attitude it takes, folks. When you want health, you have to fight for it, and you have to be determined to do that. And you have to remember why you're doing it. You want to live a life of vibrance. You want to live a longer life. You want to be there for your significant other. You want to be there for your children. You want to be there for your grandchildren. You want to enjoy the things that you deserve to enjoy in life. And when you do that, you will accomplish anything. I appreciate you listening to me today. I appreciate you taking time from your day to learn about your health. And if you have questions, please let us know. We're here to help you out. You can visit my website at drbradshuk.com. I'm constantly producing more videos and information and writing so that I can help you to be healthy naturally. You can call our office. Our phone number is here at the bottom, 828-324-0800, and I'll help to answer any questions that we can about potentially becoming a patient. But you can go to our website, learn more. If you're interested in becoming a patient, just go to the bottom of the website, fill out the form to request one of our intake packets. My staff will receive that notification and will send you the intake packet and call you to schedule an appointment and help you with any questions that you have. I appreciate you taking time from your day. Go enjoy your day, be with the people that you love, and make the best of your life. Thanks.